You've spent your life hunting ghosts, blaming the past, analyzing your trauma, pointing at the people who hurt you, the systems that failed you, the circumstances that broke your heart. And yes, all of it mattered. All of it left its mark. But what if the enemy you've been searching for, the one who sabotages your peace blocks, your growth, ruins, your relationships, isn't out there at all? What if the true danger lives within you and wears your face? This isn't easy to hear. Most people will spend their entire lives refusing to hear it, because it means that freedom, real lasting freedom, won't come from fixing your environment. It won't come from changing your job, your partner, or your identity. It comes from confronting the part of you that has never been conscious, the part you've denied, repressed, and feared. Carl Jung called it the unconscious, and he warned, what is not made conscious appears in your life as fate. You are not who you think you are. Your beliefs, your impulses, your reactions, they are not as chosen as you believe. A hidden force has shaped your life from the inside, a force made of shadow, of ancient patterns, of inherited wounds, and archetypes you've never even named. Jung didn't study the mind like a machine, he mapped it like a myth. And what he found wasn't comforting. It was dangerous, because it forced us to admit that the chaos we see outside often begins within. This is not just a video. This is a mirror, a confrontation. And if you stay with me, you will never see yourself the same way again. Because the truth is simple and terrifying. The true work begins not when you heal your wounds, but when you meet the one inside you who created them. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thanks so much for your support. So now you've looked into the mirror and seen the real enemy, not the world, not your past, but the unconscious part of you pulling the strings. But the question remains, where did it come from? If your fears, desires, and behaviors are not entirely your own, then whose are they? The answer, according to Carl Jung, is unsettling. Because your mind is not just yours. You are not just living your life, you are reliving humanity's. You carry within you the memories of thousands of ancestors, the psychic residue of every story ever told, every trauma ever endured, every instinct ever sharpened through generations of survival. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a vast inherited reservoir of psychological material that shapes every human life. It's not metaphor, it's structure. Your psyche is not a blank canvas. It's an island floating atop a dark and ancient ocean, filled with archetypes, symbols, and energies you didn't create, but must now learn to navigate. Most people think their minds are built solely from their personal experiences, their upbringing, education, and environment. But Jung shattered that illusion. He showed us that beneath the surface of individual memory lies something far older and far more powerful. He discovered that myths, dreams, and recurring emotional themes don't come from nowhere, they come from everywhere. You're not just afraid of rejection because your parents criticized you. You're afraid because rejection threatens your primal connection to the tribe, a fear wired into your biology long before your birth. This isn't about superstition. This is about survival. For thousands of years, human beings evolved with the same core dramas: belonging, betrayal, love, war, death, rebirth. These themes were burned into the collective human psyche. We encoded them in our myths, our religions, our fairy tales. They didn't just tell us stories, they told us who we were supposed to be. And now, without realizing it, you're still playing those roles. You're still haunted by ancient scripts. You might think you're choosing your partner freely, but somewhere beneath the surface, you're reenacting a myth as old as time. You might think your ambition is unique, but often you're chasing an archetypal dream of the hero, the savior, the redeemer. These patterns aren't personal, they're collective. They belong to all of us, and they shape us from within, whether we acknowledge them or not. And here's the most disturbing part: you don't have to believe in this for it to rule you. Ignoring the collective unconscious is like ignoring gravity. It still holds you down. You can't see it, but you feel its weight in your compulsions, your relationships, your inexplicable fears and longings. You feel it every time you're drawn to something, with a power you can't explain, every time you repeat a pattern you swore you'd break. So why does this matter? Because until you become aware of these forces, they own you. Until you make them conscious, they will keep manifesting as fate. You'll call them coincidence. You'll call them bad luck. You'll say, "I don't know why I keep ending up here." But Jung knew why. He spent his life studying these invisible forces. And what he found is this: unless you look into the deep waters of the collective unconscious, you will keep drowning in patterns that were never fully yours to begin with. You are not just fighting your own ghosts. You are fighting the ghosts of all humanity. And until you recognize that you will keep trying to solve an ancient puzzle with a personal key, you will keep thinking you're broken, when in reality, you're simply unaware of the myth you've been cast into. You are haunted, but not by anything outside of you. These archetypes have been waiting in your psyche for centuries. They are not here to destroy you. They are here to be seen. And the moment you see them, everything begins to change. You've begun to see the architecture beneath your mind, the myths, the archetypes, the ancient blueprints inherited from the collective unconscious. But there's something even closer, something more personal, more intimate. It doesn't live in stories. From long ago, it lives in the cracks of your everyday life, in your relationships, in your guilt, in your rage. It's not abstract. It's not philosophical. It's the shadow, and it's been with you from the beginning. You think you're a good person. You try to be kind, honest, patient. You pride yourself on being understanding. But tell me this: why do you explode when you swore you'd stay calm? Why do you judge people who mirror what you hate about yourself? Why do you sabotage moments of joy and connection with the very behavior you swore you'd outgrow? You think you're a good person. That's exactly how the shadow wins. Because the shadow doesn't live in the obvious. It doesn't scream. It hides. It adapts. It waits. Carl Jung called it the part of the psyche we refuse to see, the parts we've labeled unacceptable. Anger, envy, lust, pride, fear, manipulation. The feelings you've shoved down, the thoughts you've disowned, the impulses you've denied. All of it goes into the shadow. But what you push away doesn't disappear. It gathers power. And then when you're tired, when you're stressed, when your mask slips for just a second, it bursts through. In the argument you didn't mean to start. In the sarcastic comment that cut too deep. In the pleasure you seek in secret. In the lie you tell even to yourself. Every time you whisper, "I don't know what got into me," that's your shadow speaking. You've been told to be good, to be nice, to be polite. But in your attempt to be good, you've become split. Half of you on display, half of you buried. And that buried half, it runs the show. Not openly, not directly, but in secrets, in compulsions, in projections. You don't just dislike that person. You hate the part of yourself they reveal. You don't just fear failure. You fear what it would say about your identity. The more you deny your darkness, the more it manipulates you from behind the curtain. This is why your life feels like repetition. Why the same patterns keep circling back. The same wounds, the same arguments, the same heartbreak dressed in different faces. You're not cursed. You're unconscious. And the only way out is through the shadow. Integration, not denial, is the key. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be whole. To admit that you carry both light and dark. To stop pretending that your envy, your anger, your shame don't exist. To look at them clearly, honestly, without flinching, and say, "I see you. And I won't let you rule me anymore." This isn't easy, but it's sacred. Because once you stop running from the shadow, it stops chasing you. Once you name it, it loses its grip. You begin to notice this judgment. That's my own insecurity. This outburst, that's my unprocessed rage. This craving, that's the child in me still trying to feel worthy. And in that awareness, something miraculous happens. You stop being a puppet. You start becoming a person. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's not philosophy. That's your life story. And now you get to rewrite it. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your power misunderstood. It's the part of you that got left behind waiting to be reclaimed. Not so it can control you, but so it can serve you. Because the real threat isn't your darkness. It's your refusal to face it. You've met the shadow, the part of you swore you weren't the one. You kept locked behind masks of goodness, politeness, productivity. You've seen how denial doesn't destroy it, it empowers it. But now comes the real question. Now comes the real work. Because the shadow isn't something you fix. It's something you integrate. And integration is not a weekend workshop. It's not a clever quote or a 3-step plan. It's a death, a psychological unraveling, a slow, brutal, magnificent undoing of everything you thought you had to be. You want freedom, but are you willing to lose everything false to get it? Carl Jung called this process individuation. It's not a spiritual hobby, it's a spiritual initiation. The moment you commit to wholeness, life begins to tear away everything that isn't true. The persona starts to collapse. That polished image you built to survive at work, in relationships, on social media, begins to crack. And beneath it, something terrifying appears you. Not the curated version. Not the one trained to please, perform, and prove. The real you. And for a while, it feels like everything is falling apart. But that's not destruction. That's clearing. That's space being made for the self to finally emerge. Jung wrote, "The encounter with the self is by nature a defeat for the ego. Because the ego, the false identity, can't survive real truth. The ego wants control. It wants certainty, approval, applause. The self wants truth, integrity, depth. And when they collide, something has to die. and often it's the illusion. That's why so many people quit this path halfway through. They think healing is about feeling better. It's not. It's about becoming real. And real doesn't always feel good at first. Real feels like loneliness when the friendships built on your persona start fading. Real feels like grief when the job that fed your ego no longer feeds your soul. Real feels like terror when you stand at the edge of the known, stripped of your labels, unsure of who you are without them. But this pain is not the end. It's the doorway. The grief you feel when the mask falls off is the birth cry of the soul. Because beneath all that surviving, beneath the performance and the perfectionism, there is something untouched, something sacred, something whole. Not flawless, not pure, but whole. The self is not light without darkness. It is both. It is strength that weeps. It is power that forgives. It is clarity that admits, I don't know who I am anymore. And in that moment of surrender, the real work begins. Crises, breakdowns, losses. They're not curses. They're invitations. They come to burn away what's false, to pull you down, not to destroy you, but to root you. Individuation demands that you stop climbing ladders that lead nowhere and start digging into your wounds, into your history, into your shadow, because that's where the gold is. Jung called this the gold in the shadow, the creative, powerful, authentic life force trapped inside everything you were taught to hide. You were not born to be liked. You were not born to be normal. You were born to become whole. And that means shedding the skin of everything you pretended to be in order to feel safe. That's why you felt restless. That's why the things that used to motivate you no longer move you. That's why your soul keeps whispering, there's more. Because there is. But you won't find it by adding more to the surface. You'll find it by going inward, deeper, always deeper. So I'll ask you again. You say you want freedom. You say you want to know who you really are. But are you willing to lose what isn't real to discover what is? Are you willing to let the persona die so the self can be born? Because you weren't put here to be accepted. You were put here to become real. And real is worth everything. If you've stayed with me this far, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss any valuable insights. Now let's continue. If you've made it this far, then you already understand the work of becoming whole is not neat, linear, or logical. It doesn't follow timelines. It doesn't obey your plans. It moves in rhythms. It descends in symbols. It speaks a different language, one that cannot be decoded by logic alone. And that language is your dreams. Your dreams are not random. They're your soul screaming in symbols. Every night, as your ego rests, the deeper parts of you begin to speak. The parts that cannot lie. The parts that have been ignored, suppressed, exiled. They speak in metaphors and riddles, in bizarre stories and disturbing images. Not to confuse you, but to wake you up. Because what you repress during the day returns at night. And if you want to know what your soul is truly asking for, look there. Carl Jung didn't treat dreams as meaningless static. He revered them. He called them sacred messages from the unconscious signals from the hidden self, trying to restore psychological balance. Where modern psychology often pathologizes or dismisses dreams, Jung listened, and what he heard was profound. In dreams, the psyche tells the truth, not the truth you want, the truth you need. You dream of falling, not because your body is anxious, but because something in your life is out of control. You dream of losing your teeth, not because of superstition, but because you've lost power, voice authority. You dream of snakes, not because they're scary, but because transformation is near, and your old skin must be shed. The symbols vary, but the purpose is constant. Your dreams are trying to make you whole. Think of your dreams like a compass. They show you what you're avoiding, where you're stuck, what needs attention. Sometimes they show you the very thing your conscious mind refuses to see. A toxic relationship, a stifled desire, an unresolved grief. They don't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what the ego has refused to admit. And that's why they're so important. Because the ego lies to keep control. The dream shatters that illusion. Jung said, "The soul does not speak in words, it speaks in images." So every symbol matters. Every detail is part of a deeper pattern. That door you couldn't open. That's the opportunity you're afraid to claim. That shadow chasing you. That's the part of yourself you still deny. That room you keep returning to. That's your childhood. The blueprint that still shapes your inner architecture. These aren't just dreams. These are maps. Maps that lead back to your center. But here's the tragedy: most people ignore them. They wake up, brush them off, and go about their day blind to the wisdom they just received. They call them nonsense. They dismiss them as stress. And so, the message gets louder, more disturbing, more chaotic, because the unconscious won't be ignored forever. What you neglect will demand to be seen. What you push down will rise up again and again until you finally listen. So if your dreams are intense, pay attention. If they confuse you, lean in. If they scare, you don't run. Ask, what is this showing me about myself? What have I refused to feel? What story is my soul trying to tell me? You don't need to interpret them perfectly. You only need to care. You only need to stop pretending they don't matter. Because when you begin to honor your dreams, something shifts. You stop walking blindfolded through your life. You start listening to the quiet voice underneath the noise. You reconnect with the part of you that has never stopped speaking, even when you stopped listening. Your dreams are not accidents. They are invitations. They are warnings. They are guidance. Don't dismiss them. Don't ignore the most honest voice you have. They hold the map back to your center. And if you follow them, you just might find your way home. You've begun to see the hidden machinery, the shadow, the archetypes, the unconscious dreams trying to guide you back to center. But even as you awaken to all this, there's something else pressing against your ribs, something harder to name. It's not an emotion, it's an absence. Not a crisis, but a hollowing. A quiet ache beneath the noise of everyday life. And maybe you haven't said it out loud, but you felt it. We all have. We're drowning in information and starving for meaning. Modern life was supposed to liberate us. More freedom, more connection, more options. And yet, we've never felt more overwhelmed, more anxious, more lost. We scroll through endless feeds, flooded with ideas, advice, updates, opinions. We check boxes, build careers, optimize habits. We chase productivity like it's salvation. But beneath the curated smiles and measured milestones, something is quietly dying. The soul. You weren't built for this pace. You weren't made to consume more than you feel, perform more than you reflect, produce more than you rest. Your nervous system wasn't designed to be on 24/7. And yet, here we are, plugged in, tuned out, running on autopilot, while wondering why we feel so numb. Jung saw it coming. Decades ago, he warned that modernity would disconnect us from the symbolic, the sacred, the soulful. That in replacing ritual with routine, mystery with data, purpose with productivity, we'd become spiritually starved. And he was right. Look around. What we call anxiety is often a soul screaming to be heard. What we call depression is often a longing for a life we've forgotten how to name. What we call burnout isn't always exhaustion from doing too much. It's the cost of doing what means nothing to us. The psyche rebels. It always does. Because the soul does not ask for likes. It asks for meaning. You've felt this rebellion before. In those sleepless nights where your success felt strangely empty. In the quiet guilt of chasing goals that don't feel like yours. In the whisper that asks, "Is this really it?" when everyone else is applauding your life. That whisper isn't weakness. It's truth. And ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It makes it louder. The world is loud, but your soul speaks in stillness. And that's why it's so easy to miss. You've been trained to ignore the pause, to fill every silence, to fear stillness like it's death. But the soul lives in the slow, the quiet, the inconvenient. It lives in the art you stopped making, the walk you haven't taken, the book that stirred something ancient inside you, the tears you held back because there was no time to fall apart. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not behind. You are starved. Starved for truth, for depth, for a life that feels like yours. And you will not find that in a feed. You will not find that in your metrics. You will not find that by doing more faster. You will find it when you stop, when you sit, when you listen not to the world, but to the quiet voice within. That voice is not gone. It's just buried, beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the mask you've worn to survive in a system that profits from your disconnection. But the soul cannot be ignored forever. It will come for you, through your symptoms, through your sleeplessness, through the haunting sense that something is missing, even when you can't say what. That's not dysfunction. That's the call. And now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it. So don't turn away. Don't scroll past. Sit with it. Let the ache speak. Let the hunger show you what you've been missing. Because you're not here to perform. You're here to remember, to return, to restore what the world convinced you to forget. This isn't burnout. This is soul starvation. And now it's time to feed what truly matters. You've begun to reclaim the script. You've started to see the archetypes, the shadow, the symbolic language of your soul. But even as you integrate all of this, you still wake up with that strange aching sense of something missing. You're surrounded by everything, opportunities, information, distractions, and yet feel emptier than ever. And no one seems to notice. Because in today's world, emptiness is normalized. It's disguised. It's dressed up as productivity, performance, and polished perfection. We're drowning in information and starving for meaning. We live in a world that rewards surface and punishes depth. A world that measures worth in numbers, not inner truth. Every scroll feeds you more data, but offers less nourishment. Every notification pings your attention away from the present moment. Comparison isn't occasional, it's constant. Achievement is no longer a celebration, it's a survival skill. You don't rest. You optimize. You don't reflect. You refresh. You don't ask, "Who am I?" because there's no time left to listen for the answer. And that's the wound. That's the fracture. Because the more we feed the machine, the more we starve the soul. Jung saw this coming. He didn't predict just a psychological crisis, he saw a spiritual famine, a collapse of meaning. A world where people would be materially wealthy and emotionally bankrupt. Successful on the outside, shattered within. He warned that without myth, without ritual, without soul language, we would lose our compass, and instead of evolving, we'd dissolve. And now, we're living it. Look around. We're not okay. Anxiety is epidemic. Depression is everywhere. Disconnection is the norm. We don't speak from the heart anymore. We broadcast from the ego. We don't look at each other. We brand ourselves to one another. And the cost is staggering. Because the soul cannot thrive in a world that demands constant stimulation and instant results. The soul moves slowly. The soul lives in silence. The soul longs for what cannot be monetized or measured. And when it doesn't get what it needs, it begins to scream. That scream shows up as burnout that no vacation can fix. As panic attacks that come out of nowhere. As a numbness that creeps in even when everything should feel good. It shows up in the quiet whisper at the end of the day. Is this really who I am? Is this really all there is? That whisper is not weakness. That emptiness is not failure. That ache you carry, it's not brokenness. It's your soul trying to get your attention. And the reason you're hearing it now is because something inside you is finally ready to listen. You didn't arrive here by accident. You didn't stumble into this moment by chance. This is your soul pulling you inward, not to punish you, but to wake you. The symptoms are the signal. The pain is the proof. You've outgrown the surface. You've outgrown the algorithm. You've outgrown the metrics, the noise, the polished masks you've been told to wear. You're being invited to come back to what's real, to slow down, to listen, to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And no, it won't be easy. You'll feel resistance. You'll feel fear. But you'll also feel something else, something deeper. A flicker, a spark, a quiet knowing that this ache is not the end, but the beginning. Because the moment you name it, the moment you say it out loud, enough something shifts. You stop running. You start returning. And that's where healing begins. So say it now. Whisper it. Shout it. Write it. Whatever you need enough. Enough of the noise. Enough of the masks. Enough of starving while pretending to be full. Enough. And that's enough. You can't go back to sleep now. Not after this. Not after seeing how the shadow shaped your life. Not after hearing the soul scream through the silence. Not after realizing that the life you've been living may have never truly been yours. There's no more pretending that the anxiety is random, that the disconnection is normal, that the ache is just stress. Because now you know. You've seen behind the curtain. You've looked the unconscious in the eye, and what has been seen can no longer be invisible. Carl Jung never promised comfort. He didn't hand out soft reassurances or one-size-fits-all affirmations. What he gave us was far more powerful. He gave us truth, and truth doesn't coddle. It cracks. It confronts. It calls you to rise. You don't need to figure out your whole life right now. You don't need to decode every dream or solve every inner mystery in one night. You just need to stop pretending. Stop numbing. Stop running. Begin with honesty. Begin with presence. Begin with a single step. Say it aloud. I'm ready to face myself. That's all the soul ever wanted. Not perfection, not answers, just truth, just your attention, just your willingness to begin again, not with masks, but with your whole self. You've met your shadow. You've heard your soul. You've touched the map drawn in your dreams. And now, the real journey begins. This isn't the end. It's your return to yourself. Fully, finally, fiercely awake. If this exploration of the unconscious shadow work and Jungian insight spoke to something deep in you, please subscribe to the channel and share this message with someone ready to wake up to who they truly are.